Senate Bill 734, Senator Zucker, Education, Students with Reading Difficulties, Screenings and Interventions, favorable with 6 amendments.
Distinguished Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. We all know how important reading is to students. It's the foundation. There have been lots of philosophies on reading, whole word, phonemic awareness, using phonics. This bill tries to put a clear direction to the 24 jurisdictions that, one, we need to screen our students at an early age and find them before they fall behind and become troubled, and to make an extra effort in kindergarten, first grade, second grade to do that screening and then give the support that's needed. So that's what this bill does. It sets up some conditions. Now, it came in fairly prescriptive. The committee wanted to give flexibility to the school system, so we did offer a number of amendments. Amendment 1 changes the purpose paragraph. Amendment 2 alters the scope of the bill to be for students in kindergarten, not pre-kindergarten. First grade if the student was not screened in kindergarten, or they demonstrated difficulty mastering grade level reading in kindergarten, or entering students transferring in elementary school. Amendment 3 strikes language in the bill that would have required specified students to be screened with a specific screening instrument, and instead requires the screening instrument to be based on foundational reading skills that include phonological and phonemic awareness processing. Amendment 4 strikes language in the bill that require the County Board of Education to conduct informal diagnostic assessment. Amendment 5 requires specified data to be aggregated and searchable after the screening takes place and the support is offered, so we can look at how counties are doing. And finally, Amendment 6 requires the State Department of Education to provide technical assistance to the county boards so that the boards can provide training rather than requiring the department to provide the training. Mr. President, I would move the 6 committee amendments and a favorable committee report. Oh, and there's one other item that we should mention is some of the recommendations in this bill are also implied in the Kerwin bill. So we have intent language at the end of the bill that says some of the money appropriated in Kerwin can be used for the screening for reading, which is implied in the Kerwin as well. So with that, Mr. President, I would move the 6 committee amendments and a favorable committee report.
Okay, let me try to recognize people who have not spoken yet today. I'll recognize somebody from District 33.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Really important bill. What was the vote in the committee?
Six in favor, 0 nay, 5 abstention.
Okay, and who came and testified against the bill?
Against?
It's hard to believe that somebody would be against this wonderful bill, but I presume somebody came out and...
We did have opposition.
Generally, what was it?
Well, it came from local boards of education and superintendents.
Really? That
felt, as the bill came in, it was very prescriptive. It said what instrument you should use in kindergarten, what instrument in second grade, and it was extremely prescriptive. It also included language that not only for a screening, then a diagnostic, then the support, which we think raised the mandate to the locals. Right. So we trimmed it back based on some of that feedback to make it more a more reasonable cost to the locals.
But it's interesting, as I know, as 4 kids and 9 grandkids, screening tends to be fairly standardized. So the bill was talking about standard operating procedure type of things?
Well, no, it went beyond that. Actually, different jurisdictions use different screening tools, and I can't tell you that everyone has a screening for reading and what the instrument is. The advocates for the bill have a very fairly clear approach to what is the answer to reading and screening, and it was fairly narrowly cast. And it took away some of the flexibility in terms of the local jurisdictions.
Now, was it primarily...
And back to your... opponents were Maryland Association of Boards of Education, the Superintendent's Association, Baltimore City Public Schools.
Okay. Now, is this primarily, would you categorize this bill as primarily going after dyslexia? Are there other learning difficulties that this bill is designed to come out? For instance, I was one of 9 kids. When you were old enough, you went to school. I had a vision problem. and nobody picked it up till about about fourth grade, and it really had an impact on me. Is this physical limitations, dyslexia? What are they looking for?
That's first of all, a great question.
Thank you.
It's for the academic reading, and it's not just dyslexia.
Okay.
This legislature actually passed a bill on vision screening, and we had a follow-up bill we heard, I think yesterday or the day before, that I believe 38,000, a fairly large number of students through that screening were found to be have vision problems, and then were directed to a specialist. So the state is addressing that. This bill doesn't.
So if we had that original bill, why do we need this one? What does this do the other one?
No, the other one was literally, physically on screening, eye vision.
Gotcha.
This is on reading skills.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, Senator from Carroll County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think some of what you've said may answer my question. I'm just trying to confirm. Obviously, it's a great goal. We want to be sure that people our young people are reading. So my county I've actually kind of gone through it with our school board. They have an extensive program that they do to screen and then monitor progress on reading and other things. They have a whole setup. I mean, it's really extensive, a handbook and everything. So I saw a lot of things are getting struck out of the bill that were very, very prescriptive, which I think is good. So you wanted to give the counties flexibility. Is that correct? And if there's, I even saw still mention of like a handbook and things like that. If the county has something like that, is that going to be able to qualify for this? Or
we pulled back on that. We actually amended a lot of that out. Again, we felt it was a little too prescriptive. Look, the advocates, they're great people, and they're very zealous in their support for this. But I think they wanted to put it down from A to Z with every I and dotted and every T crossed. We pulled back to allow exactly what you're doing. And in some cases, excuse me, some jurisdictions might have to make very few changes if they're fulfilling a lot of this. We wanted to set the parameters for this to take place.
So it does do a local mandate, but there's who decides whether you've met the mandate? Is it the state? The state board will kind of oversee this process?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure whether regulations will be needed to do a detailed implementation. In most cases, fairly clear.
I was just looking at the fiscal note. It says it imposes a local mandate, but it sounds to me like there may be some jurisdictions that weren't really doing this or maybe not doing it very much, and then others that are doing a lot more, and it gives room for sort of both.
You're absolutely right. And we saw some of those original numbers that were seemingly high. And so we reduced some of what we thought were onerous. I mean, a number of jurisdictions do screening. In terms of a second stage of diagnostic, that could be expensive.
And I know, for example, I know my county does some diagnostic things, so I just wanted to be sure
This would have mandated everyone to do a full diagnostic. I think they called it informal diagnostic for every student. And we thought that might be a little heavy-handed. And then it calls for support, but it doesn't say exactly the support. So we wanted to give direction for those not doing it to show the importance of this without being overly burdensome. We tried to strike a balance, if you will.
That's good. And I think the last question I have is, we're doing a lot with the Kerwin Commission. There's a big bill that's been introduced, or a number of bills, but one in particular. Is any of this going to be in tandem with that, or is this going to be something else on top of? Or I just have a concern that we give, because our teachers, and I know you know this, of course, the whole diagnostic thing, teachers spend a whole lot of time already filling out paperwork on every student. So I'm glad that we're not doing that in this bill. Is this going to be integrated with what we're doing with Kerwin?
I would believe yes. The Kerwin has a general overview, and then there's some specific expenditure areas. One is called transitional support interventions, I think. In the Kerwin bill, we're actually going to add a few words to make it clear that some of that money can be spent on screening.
Okay.
Doesn't require it. So we think it can be integrated and not be any more prescriptive, but be supportive of one another.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on the Sixth Amendment, Senator from Frederick County.
I just wanted to explain something. The senator next to me here asked about how anybody could oppose it, and no one did oppose it. There were 5 abstentions, and I was one of them. And I just wanted to explain why I did and why I think the others did, that they could speak for themselves. The original bill had a fiscal note I don't have in front of me, but it was like at least $60 million back on local governments. And the chair has done a very good job of trimming out some of the prescriptive things and some of the requirements that would run the figure up that high. But and I think the others really wanted to know what this bill was going to cost and impose on local governments before I voted for it, because there's a lot of money back on the local boards, and I think that's why the local boards had a problem with it. So it's a good bill with good intentions. I just wanted to know what the cost was going to be before I voted for it. Thank you.
All right. We have some amendments here. 6 amendments, Senator, on the amendments, Senator.
I just wanted to ask about the bill with the amendments that have been proposed. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat. Not a crab or not an oyster, it's frog. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, if you would just answer a couple of questions that I have, I'll try to be brief. This takes effect, even with the amended version, it takes effect this year, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you said
Yes.
Parts of this are also embedded with Kerwin, and we don't know what parts of Kerwin will be implemented when. So here's my concern, even with the amended version. I know I have not been able to get adequate information about the cost implication, and I'm very concerned about the cost. I know you've worked hard to trim it with amendments, and that makes it a little bit better, but it's such an important issue that I want to make sure that our counties have the resources they need when this is fully implemented. And my concern is that if we send down an unfunded mandate, which this looks like it might be, that then we are going to put on top of that some expectations with Kerwin, which are yet to be determined. And for school systems like Dorchester, White-Comico, some of them, this is going to have quite a significant impact. I've been trying to call my boards of ed so they can respond to me, and I haven't gotten those answers, and I'm waiting for them. In fact, I've been texting while we've been working on the floor because I want to be sure of the implications, because ultimately it will revert to the county, and we have an issue right now with that. So can you answer that for me?
Let me try to answer that.
Thank you.
The blueprint for Maryland's future, what's being called year 0 of the 10-year phase-in of Kerwin, in year 1 essentially will give money, support, financial support to all the jurisdictions to expand pre-kindergarten, to help teacher salaries, to do transitional support work, and there are really no additional mandates in year 0. I think overall there are going to be some conditions on how money will be used as it's implemented over the next 10 years. But at least in the bill that we've heard and we'll be voting on sometime in the next few days, it doesn't add additional burdens to the local jurisdictions. So we don't have the full implementation bill in front of us this year. Again, it's only a very small piece of Kerwin. It's the down payment, if you will. But it's essentially money designated for certain areas that jurisdictions like yours will be receiving. And I don't have the numbers in front of me as to how much it'll be. So I don't think there are additional mandates in the Kerwin bill as I've seen it. Obviously, there can be amendments in that bill. And in this bill, I can't tell you exactly how many of the jurisdictions we heard about, Carroll County, that they're doing much of this already. So I don't know how much extra work or extra burden it'll be on your jurisdiction, but a lot of school systems are screening students.
Right, yeah, and the word I got back from our locals is that they do have some of this in place, but not to the extent of the bill before it was amended. What I'm trying to get back from our local jurisdiction is, with the new amendments, what kind of an impact will that have? And then my other question would be, if we do go through with current and we have that additional poverty group part of it, will that be able to cover some of this? That's what I don't know, and I sure would like to have some time to be able to get that. I don't know if we could put this to the end of the calendar and come back and
The
visit
bill's going to be layover under the rules, okay?
Well, she's not asking for layover, Mr. President. She just said put it till the end of the calendar. It was the previous bill that had been laid over, I believe.
And that would just be for the purpose of, once we resolve these amendments, if in fact we would need another amendment that would delay the implementation or phase in the
Right.
implementation.
Chairman,
or
whatever you wanna
something
do.
like
Well, let's start with laying it over, special ordering until the end of the calendar.
Okay.
And then if we need an extra day, we'll do it.
You mind?
But
that. I'd appreciate
But
it.
let me just answer that question. The last section that we added says, Section 2, and be it further enacted that it is the intent of the General Assembly that money appropriated in accordance with the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, Chapter Senate Bill 1030 of the Acts of the General Assembly shall be used to offset the cost of implementation of Section 1 of this Act. So it's our intent to allow the down payment that your jurisdiction will receive to use some of that money to help offset the cost. And I will be preparing an amendment, if it's not prepared already, by our great counsel, in the Kerwin bill that does exactly the same thing, that makes it explicitly clear that some of the money that your jurisdiction and all the jurisdictions will receive in the down payment, year zero, can also be used for screening. So we're trying to accomplish exactly what you're concerned about.
Right, and then, but again, the implementation date, I believe, is January, isn't it? Or July?
I think it's July 1.
It's July 1, so that's a pretty quick turnaround. That was part of my concern.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you,
Bill's made a
Mr. Chairman.
special order for the end of the calendar today. We're now going to go to report the committee.